Take a voyage on the starship Enterprise.
Is planet forbidden?
Join the crew in their search for Spock.
Head for Taco Bell at warp speed and start collecting Star Trek 3 glasses. Beam home Spock. Klingon treachery. The secret of Valtrapan. And fate of the Enterprise. Star Trek 3 glasses. Only at Taco Bell.
Tough times for that crew. They'll survive.
Hey everyone, welcome back to our analyzation and look into the Star Trek Trilogy. Before we begin, there's an interesting observation I'd like to bring up that some believe the even-numbered Star Trek movies are considered the good ones, while the odd-numbered ones are considered the bad ones. I can understand why the first and fifth movie get a bad rep, but Star Trek Generations has its moments, and Star Trek Insurrection, yeah, I confess I haven't seen it yet for reasons. And even if Star Trek Nemesis is an even number, it's one that gets a lot of divisive reactions, to say the least. Not to mention, it was not a box office hit, and kinda ended the Star Trek film franchise. At least until 2009. But if the case being the odd-numbered entries are considered bad, what does it mean for the Kelvin timeline? Isn't the 2009 reboot by J.J. Abrams generally well-liked? And despite the underwhelming box office reception of Star Trek Beyond, many view it as an improvement over Star Trek Into Darkness. An even-numbered entry, I might add. You can't just judge a sequel by a simple theory like that. Sometimes the most important benefactor is whether it's entertaining or not. Not everyone's gonna land, trust me. But in the case of Star Trek III: The Search for Spock, it had a lot to live up to. It couldn't match that high bar that Wrath of Khan left behind, but it tried. By Lord, it did. If I had to echo some similar words and sentiments from film critic Roger Ebert, it would probably be this.
The first one was kind of a low-budget Star Wars. They had all the special effects. The second one returned to the Star Trek tradition, which is, let's make a movie about ideas and about the nature of humanity and the nature of intelligence.
Right.
This one is kind of a compromise. There's a little bit of that Vulcan philosophy there, and there's also a lot of special effects. So it kind of had a compromise between the first two. It was good, but it wasn't great Star Trek material.
I agree, absolutely.
Well, okay, that's... Gee, okay.
And I'd have to agree on many fronts. Search for Spock is more of a compromise that tries to meet in the middle, somewhere between the rivalry villain nature from Wrath of Khan and the high concept experience nature that was presented in the motion picture. And in some ways, many can argue it's the most underrated in the Star Trek franchise. And with that being said, if there was one adjective that was best to describe this entry, it's weird. Weird. Really, really weird. 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 Maybe not uber finanza, but certainly mondo bizarro. Look, as much as I enjoy Search for Spock, and I do, you gotta admit, when you really describe the plot on paper, it's a strange one. In order to understand the oddness, we gotta go over a lot of plots, so beware of spoilers. This one continues where Wrath of Khan ended with Spock sacrificing his life to save the Enterprise crew. A funeral is held where Spock's casket gets shot into space and lands on the revived planet created by the Genesis device. No surprise they fired that thing out there, given Spock's casket is really a torpedo casing, but that's the least of my worries. On the way back home, Dr. McCoy starts behaving odd and starts to act like Spock.
Help me, Jim. Take me home. Climb the steps of Mount Seleia.
Paul's Mount Seleia is on Vulcan. We're home.
We'll get back to that in a moment. Anyway, Spock's father Sarok shows up, appearing frustrated, because they jettisoned Spock's body into space. I'd be more concerned as to why they couldn't wait to bring home Spock's corpse so they could have a proper funeral with his dad attending. But Sarok is more annoyed because there is a way to bring Spock back through an ancient Vulcan ritual, but two things are needed: Spock's body and his living spirit, which is referred to as his Katra. So, because his body is over on this planet, he's more frustrated by the fact that he can just bring it home in order to perform said ritual. So now they have to go back to the Genesis planet to retrieve his body in order to revive Spock. Basically, Spock's Katra, from what I understand, is a good bulk of his identity and memories which got ported over into someone. So now they have to take that and Spock's body and combine the two together in order to revive Spock. It's kind of like when you have that external hard drive as a backup and you're trying to install that in the computer. It's more akin to that. Though when you really do think about it very, very hard, this one does avoid using terms like Spock's soul, Spock's ghost, Spock's spirit, and even the term resurrection, so that way it doesn't come off sounding blasphemous or some big religious allegory. It's subtly there, but it doesn't go too far with the whole thing. And given how the fantasy level nature of this franchise is more aimed towards children and adults, this does a pretty good job when it comes to tap dancing around the oatmeal on things like, "Oh no, Spock's ghost is possessed in someone, we need to revive him in some way." It is eerie when you think about it, but thankfully it doesn't go too hard on the concept. Especially when the whole plot of your movie is trying to resurrect a dead friend in the third film of your franchise. About death, life, rebirth, and resurrection. Also, I want to take the time to say Happy Easter, everybody. Sarok thinks Spock's Katra is in Kirk, given he is Spock's friend, but as it turns out, it's in someone else. How do they find that out? By playing back clips from Wrath of Khan! Yeah! They actually use footage from the last movie. Okay, they say it's security footage, but look at the camera angles. It's way too cinematic to be seen as surveillance footage. And sure, they use some alternate angles, which is kind of cool, but in my mind, they just popped in a videotape or DVD the last movie to see what happened.
But there's been a new breakthrough in home video marketing. Yes. Instant cassettes. They're out in stores before the movie is finished.
Sure enough, they figure out that McCoy is the one Spock transferred his spirit into, and now they have to bring McCoy and Spock's body to planet Vulcan in order to reunite the two elements together. I do like the idea that McCoy has Spock's living spirit, and it does lead to some good gags in the first half, where he acts more like Spock. However, as things move along, that idea seems to die down a little, especially given how things escalate. It would have been more nice to play up the duality a bit more, kind of like in South Park where Cartman was possessed by Kenny for a while.
Yeah, but what about Kenny? His soul is still in Cartman's body. No, I just drank his memories. I'm not sharing my body with that poor piece of crap. Stop calling me poor, you fat...
Still, it's worth it for this funny line when McCoy finds out what's going on.
That green-blooded son of a bitch. It's his revenge for all those arguments he lost.
Even if you don't know the characters that well, it still works within the context of the movie. Okay, so in Wrath of Khan we were introduced to the Genesis device, a missile-looking item that can create inhabitable worlds through dead matter. This was a major part of the last movie, as you had something that could be used for good or bad purposes if fallen in different hands. By the end of Wrath of Khan, there was a poignant feeling seeing a brand new planet created at the end. Mostly of plant and water life. I guess if they did animal life, it would have been a little too much, but go figure, it's science fiction. Here, one of the co-creators, David Marcus, who is also Kirk's son, returns to the planet along with Savick, not played by Kirstie Alley, but instead Robin Curtis, who find the planet is rapidly aging, and the effects of the Genesis device also brought Spock's body back to life. But because he is without his living spirit, he's more of a blank slate. As it turns out, David used unstable protomatter in the device, which is causing the planet to mature more upon each hour. This plot element is something I'm a little split on. I like the idea of a planet going through different stages of life, and there is some creativity to it. One minute, things look lush and green, and then it becomes an ice age within the matter of minutes, with cactuses for some reason. And I do like it when it turns into this giant lava terrarium by the end. This effect mirrors Spock's body, which also ages faster too, as you see him go from a child to a teenager, and then realize into an adult. It's a neat concept that I would like to see other science fiction movies try to do. However, it does lead to some awkward moments. Like 1 minute where an adolescent version of Spock goes into his adult form, and it just feels like a cheaper version of that werewolf transformation scene from American Werewolf in London. Just look at the way the face pulls forward. It almost seems a little reminiscent of that. If not, a little more plasticine if you ask me. But then there's this awkward moment when a young Spock undergoes Ponfar, a ritual where Vulcans have to mate every 7 years or else they die. Saavik decides to help out, and yeah, even if we don't see anything explicit, it still comes off as awkward given the way they manner the fingering here. The more I think about it, should I really censor this?
Pickup lines in Star Trek.
No, don't encourage me!
Moving on from that, I gotta admit, when it comes to the whole planet aging concept element, upon seeing Search for Spock first time around, this is the one thing that really was a deal breaker for me, and I didn't like it. It kind of bugged me on how we went from a Star Trek sequel that ends on a hopeful note to one where they'd say, oh, the planet is unstable and kind of crumbling apart. Well, that's kind of a shame there. And even when you think about it more, if they left Spock's body on that planet, he most likely would have died given the whole place crumbles apart near the end of the movie. Though as I've gotten older, I've come to appreciate the idea more, even if I'm still a little bit mixed. What I do like is how it carries this Frankenstein feel to it that this planet was based on a science experiment that was intended for good. Yet, one miscalculation shows that even the most good of intentions don't always work out well. To think we've mastered space travel in this franchise, and yet we still can't create a habitable, breathing paradise just from a bunch of dead matter.
Even in the future, nothing works!
Well, this movie packs a lot when it comes to possessed friends, aging Vulcan zombies, and rapidly evolving planets. And how they're able to fit in an antagonist in the mix of it all is a pure wonder given how much juggling around they have here. Enter Kruge, a Klingon that discovers the Genesis device and seeks to locate it in order to use it as a weapon. This is the kind of character you can view as either a bad guy or a sympathetic villain. On one hand, he's out to find the secrets of the device and use it for his own will. On the other, there's this line when he talks to his officers.
Oh yes, new cities, homes in the country, and overhead, fluttering in the breeze, the flag of the Federation. Charming.
So you could make the slim argument that he's finding the Genesis device out of fear that maybe the Federation will use this as a weapon against the Klingons. Despite a throwaway line mentioning that the Federation and Klingons are in a peace treaty talks, which won't pay off until a little later down the road. He will go as far to even use murder as a means if need be. And while he's not impacting like Khan, I do like how he's smarter than he appears. Like when he fights against Kirk and their spaceships, Kruge is unaware the Enterprise is under some technical issues. At one point, he knocks out their automation center that powers the phaser banks on the Enterprise, ceasing their will to fire back, leading to this moment.
Ready to fire emergency tube.
Why haven't they finished us? They outgunned me 10-1.
Even if he's not much of a threat, there are two things that make the Kruge character a bit interesting to me. Considering he's a Klingon, he carries a code of honor, and also shows quite a bit of intelligence. In any given direction, or any other movie, he would so easily be a Yosemite Sam space-style villain, but thankfully they do not go in that direction. What we get here is someone who wants to play it fair and actually try to match the wits of his enemy. And considering the stasis of the Enterprise, at any given moment, Kruge could just blast it straight into the galaxy, but he doesn't. He's a little more intrigued to see exactly if he matches the same level that Captain Kirk does when it comes to fighting and planning and elements like that. So not only does he want to play with his enemy a little more, but also see exactly if it matches the same intellect that he has. It's these little small subtleties alone that make Kruge a rather underrated villain in all the Star Trek universe. Maybe one of many at most. And while Kruge doesn't have a lasting impact, what does make him memorable is Christopher Lloyd's performance. Even if one views this as a gimmick to see what it would be like if Doc Brown was an alien, Lloyd does a really solid job given how good of a character actor he is. Bear in mind, Back to the Future came out 1 year after Search for Spock, so the only two things Christopher Lloyd was known for was his character Reverend Jim on Taxi and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Lloyd doesn't overact, but keeps his performance exactly where it needs to be. It's not overly hammy, and even Lloyd knows when to play it subtle when he's using facial expressions under Klingon language, or some nonverbal moments that flesh out the character more. And yeah, I do like it when he gets to fight Kirk at the end. It's a neat little throwback to the original series when Kirk had to wrestle alien foes. But the tension is increased here when you have the whole planet falling apart around you and lava rising at every turn. Among the weird things in this movie, I feel it's the Kruge character that holds it together for me. Yeah, it's not menacing like Khan, but does it need to be? At the end of the day, it doesn't hurt to have an entertaining villain once in a while, and you do understand Kruge's motivations. It's kind of interesting to note that Search for Spock not only has Leonard Nimoy returning as the famous Vulcan, but also he directs this entry as well. When Nimoy was asked to reprise his role, he also added on the suggestion of directing the third entry as well. Something which that almost didn't happen thanks to Michael Eisner, who was the head of Paramount at the time, who thought that Leonard Nimoy hated Star Trek, disliked being typecasted in the Vulcan role, and believed that it was stated in the actor's contract that his character Spock had to be killed off permanently. Leonard Nimoy retaliated to him, and I quote,
"This is not true. I did not ask for Spock to die. It was not in my contract that Spock must die for me to appear in Star Trek 2. He said, it wasn't? I said, no. I said, Michael, the contract is in a file in the building that you're in. Would you go to the trouble of having somebody pull it out of the file and take a look at it and see if it's in that contract? Oh, no. He said, I'll take your word for it if it's not in there. I don't know how this word got out, that it was in the contract, because it was not. Well, okay, this is a different story. I said, Michael, we should have a face-to-face talk again. He said, come on in tomorrow. I said, what time? He said, 9 o'clock. I went in the next morning at 9 o'clock, and we talked for about an hour. And very shortly after that, within a matter of days, we had made the deal, and I was set to direct Star Trek 3.
For a first-time director, Nimoy does a good job maintaining the character relationships really well. They practically steal the Enterprise when it was stationed to be deconstructed. Even if there's a risk factor given they're breaking rules to save a friend, the important thing is they're literally going to the ends of the world to save one that matters to them, and we do feel that emotion. But there's a lot of strange moments injected in the first half that makes things feel a little uneven. There's one scene where McCoy, possessed under Spock, goes to a bar to find someone to drive him to the Genesis planet. It's revealed the whole Genesis project is supposed to be kept under wraps due to some political fallout, and the planet itself is off limits. McCoy seeks help from an alien that looks like Howie Mandel if he survived an explosion at a bubblegum factory while mutating into an exotic fish.
I name not important. You seek I. Message received. Available ship stands by.
Oh, and apparently he speaks like the caterpillar from Alice in Wonderland. I guess moments like these are meant to add some form of levity given how darker things get in the second half. But even then, they just come off feeling weird and off-tone with the rest of the movie. Things do kick into gear once Kirk and the crew get to the Genesis planet, leading to a variety of operatic moments that feel earned. There is proper build-up, and you just feel the high tension all around when one character dies or a crucial thing is destroyed in order to save others. I will do the diligent duty and honor of not spoiling these two very particular moments, as I feel unto newcomers, they deserve to be experienced to them as a surprise. For those who have seen the movie, you probably have a pretty good idea of what I'm talking about. It's these very two big moments, perfectly sandwiched between each other, that don't come out of nowhere at pure random, but are well executed, have perfect build-up to them, and in a way they almost have an operatic sense to them, almost to the similar ones that we saw in the last movie. And on their own, they're really good scenes. And I feel that talking about them and discussing them would ruin the surprise for those who haven't experienced Search for Spock. So I'll just say this much. It's these two moments that really test the limits of the Enterprise crew, to show exactly how far they will go to save a very good friend, even if it means sacrificing a life, or losing something so dear to them in order to get out of a bad situation. They truly elevate the sequel as a major risk taker. And for all the uneven moments in the first half, it's these two that really test the limits of how far one will go to save someone. And I'm just going to leave it at that because, trust me, the movie is worth seeing, even if it's just for those two moments and Christopher Llyod alone. And while it might not reach the high-level bar of Wrath of Khan, all I gotta ask is, does it need to be in order to become entertaining? I feel like this is a similar case with movies like Return of the Jedi, The Ghost of Frankenstein, Gremlins 2, or some of the Dracula sequels Hammer Horror made. Those movies had the difficult task of walking in the shadow of their predecessor, and they knew they couldn't top what the last one did. They took risks by going in different directions, but kept the entertainment value consistent. Those movies and Search for Spock proved in some cases, you don't need to overpower what made the last one so good. Sometimes you just need to let your audience have a little fun, even if there are some faults here and there. Yeah, there's a lot of odd things that I can probably pick apart, and they do feel off. But Search for Spock is an entry that has grown on me a bit more over time. After questioning the value of death in the last movie, we explore the idea of rebirth and the value of life. Even if the execution is off at times, there are some entertaining moments that keep it a step above the other lackluster entries in the Star Trek franchise. You do feel for Kirk and crew's mission to save a friend, and the stakes are raised just enough to show how far they will go to help someone who is family to them. The villain may not leave a lasting impression, but hey, it's Christopher Llyod and he's having a blast. What's not to love about it? Toss in some emotional beats, some cool action scenes, and you have a sequel that may not be 100% perfect, but a definite crowd pleaser that you should see. Until then, join me next week as we take a look at the last entry in the Star Trek Trilogy, The Voyage Home. Until then, live long and happy Easter egg hunting!
We come from the fire, living in the fire, go back to the fire, turn the world around.
We come from the fire, go back to the fire, turn the world around.
We come from the water, living in the water, go back to the water, turn the world around. We come from the water, living in the water, go back to the water, turn the world around. We come from the mountain, living on the mountain, go back to the mountain, turn the world around. We come from the mountain, living on the mountain, go back to the mountain, turn the world around. Water make the river wash the mountain, fire make the sunlight turn the world around. Heart is of the river, body is the mountain, spirit is the sunlight, turn the world around. We are of the spirit, truly of the spirit, only can the spirit turn the world around. We are of the spirit, truly of the spirit, only can the spirit turn the world around. Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are? See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are? Oh, so is life about you are. So is life. Oh, so is life about you are. So is life. Oh, so is life about you are.
Cut.
My God, Bones. What have I done?
What you always do. Turn death into a fighting chance to live.
Admiral Kirk is being court-martialed. Spock has lost his memory. It's me, McCoy. You really have gone where no man's gone before. They're going back in time to explore the strangest world of all.
Many of their customs will doubtless take us by surprise.
You guys like Italian?
No. Yes. No. Yes.
Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home, rated PG. Now playing.